Right, good morning everybody. We'll get started. So welcome to today's Learn to Swim webinar on maximising pool space. So today you are hosted by myself, so I'm presenting. I'm Ruth Edwards. I'm the Learn to Swim manager for the southwest of England, and I'll be presenting the main content. I do also have Alex Barrett, who's Learn to Swim manager for the north of England, who's going to be monitoring the chat box. So Alex, would you like to introduce yourself and say hello?
Hi there, yeah, good morning everyone. I'm Alex. Thanks for the introduction, Ruth. Same job as Ruth. I just look after the north, so a little bit colder where I am, I'm sure, than where it is you, Ruth. But yeah, I'm here and I'll be on the chat box if anyone needs any help.
Brilliant, thank you, Alex. So just to let you know, today's webinar is being recorded. So a copy of this presentation will be sent out to you via a box link probably tomorrow. If it needs to be edited, it will take a little bit of time for it to go onto the website for people to watch it at their leisure, just because obviously we're running at a skeleton staff like many of you are. Please can I ask that you keep your microphones on mute. There will be an opportunity to ask any questions. So we've got a chat box function which you can put any questions in as we go through. And also, if you've got any good ideas, anything you've done within your centres to maximise your pool space, if you've got any suggestions, then please do add them in as well, and we'll go through those at the end. So there's that chat box function, and also if we do get an opportunity to, we'll also potentially be able to take verbal questions as well. Today is the most booked webinar out of all of our webinars. We've actually had 202 people booked, and we've currently got about 100 people on, so we might well have people joining part way through. So just want to go through some web event rules with you. Obviously, please, no swearing or rude language to be used. Please don't use the annotate function. It has been turned off, so you won't be able to do that anyway. And you won't be able to share your screens unless you're asked to. Again, microphones will be on mute unless you're asked to unmute them. And please make comments through the chat box. You can do that to everybody, not just to the host on this occasion. Please be aware any participant breaking these rules or disrupting the webinar in any way will be removed. I don't know if you're aware of Zoom bombing, but there have been situations where Zoom has been hacked. In the event that we have some unsolicited content, we will stop the webinar with immediate effect, and we won't give you any notice on that. So we will shut down the webinar immediately if something comes up that isn't something that we have prepared. In the event that does happen, we'll re-record the official content separately, and we'll send you out a link to that content so you don't miss out on the content that obviously you've signed up for. I'm hoping, touch wood, we won't have anything like that. However, you might have seen on Scottish Swimming there was a bit of a situation the other day. Okay, so just a bit of a disclaimer. So Swim England, we don't actually operate any pools or swim schools. So any information contained in this webinar is for guidance only. If you do want to make any changes to your existing layouts or timetables, you'll need to follow your due process within your centre. So consult your manager or the pool operator before you make those changes. Any changes you make should be in conjunction with the needs of your business and take into account the current climate. So obviously, you know, when we do come back after the COVID crisis, potentially you'll be looking at rebuilding your swim school. I would imagine it's fairly unlikely we're going to start back with everybody who was currently on your swim school coming straight back to lessons. So obviously you need to adapt your timetables effectively. If you do make any changes to your sessions, so for example you're increasing the number of swimming lessons in the pool, we recommend reviewing your risk assessments to make sure that things like your lifeguarding practices, number of lifeguards on poolside are all within your guidance and updated in your pool safety operating procedures. So don't make any changes without making sure you change your risk assessments as well. Okay, so first of all, because we have got quite a lot of people on this webinar, we are in a situation where we can't really make it particularly interactive. So we will be kind of almost talking to you a lot of this. There will be some opportunities for some feedback through the chat box, as I said. All of the information within this webinar is based on our experience as Learn to Swim managers, and operationally what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, and the different things you need to take into account. So first of all, the benefits of maximising pool usage. So for teachers, so if you can maximise your space, you can actually align your space to the Learn to Swim framework, and that will mean that your teachers aren't over swimming and over assessing their learners. So for example, if you had a stage 1 class and you were limiting them to a 5 by 5 metre section of the pool, it means that they're not overstretching those learners and over assessing their ability. So you're looking at the quality over the quantity. If your swimmers are swimming shorter distances, it enables teachers to give more effective feedback. So if you have stage 5s swimming a 25 metre length, potentially they're swimming the full 25 metres before they're getting any feedback from that teacher. So that's going to benefit the student, the pupil, and also for the teacher, it gives them more opportunity to develop that child. You could potentially reduce your teacher to learner ratios, and we know as teachers, the smaller the ratio, the easier it is sometimes to teach. But you could still increase the capacity and the income of the overall swim school. You can rotate your teaching stations, and that gives learners experiences of longer distances and different depths of water. And by doing this, it reduces bottlenecking throughout your programme. Potentially, there's an extended length of stay from your swimmers, so learners will leave the scheme at a higher level, and there'll be a better understanding of water safety. That means they're also more likely to go into other aquatic disciplines. So there's lots of opportunity for new lessons. So the classic, aquatic disciplines are diving, rookie, artistic swimming, water polo. There's also dolphin, snorkeler, and fin to fit, and any other programs that you've put into place, as well as the 8 to 10 competitive swim. If you've got clearly defined areas, that can also increase your safety, especially if you've got those floating booms, and that kind of limits where those children are going. And there's potential for more teaching hours throughout the day and variety, so that's going to affect your teacher retention. So as a teacher, you don't necessarily want to just come in to do 2 hours of work between 4 and 6. You're going to be much more willing to work kind of a fuller day, especially if you have to travel, whether that's doing schools in the morning, then afternoons doing adult and child and preschool, and then in the afternoons 4 till 6 or 4 till 7 taking group swim school stages 1 to 7. So the benefit to the customers then, there's an increase in capacity, so they're more likely to get into lessons, and potentially a reduction in the waiting times. So the more flexibility you have in your programme, the more availability there are, and children will move up more quickly, so therefore spaces will come available more quickly as well. Learners will receive a better quality lesson and progress in alignment to the framework, so they'll be rewarded and retained. The feedback they'll get is more regular and more relevant, allowing them to progress more quickly, and they're more likely to stay in the programme and become a more competent swimmer. And obviously their ability to take part in other aquatic activity, as we mentioned before. For other customers, there's an increased availability for local clubs and groups. So swimming clubs can potentially reduce the costs where lanes aren't used efficiently. So if you had a swimming club, especially with the current times when you come back, potentially they will have lost swimmers. Those children who were on the kind of brink of being bored with swimming club and not wanting to continue anymore, this might be an opportunity for them to give up the swimming club. So then potentially there's going to be lanes available. What we would recommend, if at all possible, a situation where the Learn to Swim Learn to Swim scheme is running their kind of 7s, 8s, 9s and 10s alongside a swimming club situation. So therefore you can target swimmers to go across the swimming club, and also the teachers can work together then to develop the teachers for those higher end stages. Potentially you can increase your public swimming times, and it gives you ability to provide other activities which can suit a range of individual needs and preferences. So there's things like Good Boost, Aquafit, lane swimming and general swimming, fun swimming, all those other different things that you add into your timetable, the Disney sessions, for example. And that will meet your client and your social needs and meet the needs of your local council initiatives. So some operators will have to respond back to a client, so the local council, and they might well have put in stipulations. So for example, they might have to have a portion of the pool available for public swimming at all times. Obviously, the biggest factor is income, so especially as a pool operator. So pool space is a limited commodity and the biggest cost to a leisure provider or the pool operator or swim school. So an increase in capacity on your swim school is an increase in income. So when you have an income growth, there's an increased revenue from lessons, potentially casual swim, private hire, and secondary spend as well. So here's an example Learn to Swim provider. So they had a maximum capacity of 1,121, and they basically did a big program review and looked where they could put lessons on potentially, what areas of the pool they could use which they weren't using before, and they were able to increase their capacity to 1,924. So that actually created 803 new spaces. Now obviously kind of depends on selling those spaces and what those spaces equivalent to level are or stage in the swim scheme, but that meant that they had a potential to hit an additional 21k a month on their income line. So obviously that needs to take into account the additional staffing and demand, but that's a massive amount of potential from doing quite a simple pool timetable review task. Extended length of stay means long-term income, allowing focus to be on retention rather than sales as well. I always say focus on your retention and then your sales will follow, because people love a great service, and if you're retaining your customers, you're delivering a fantastic service. It also means it's a lot easier for you to manage within your centres, because actually, you know, going out and finding new people is quite hard, whereas retaining people is a lot easier. There's also opportunity for new lessons when the pool space is quietest. So for example, you could put adult and child, preschool and senior swimming lessons on during the day, and that is obviously targeting those quiet pool times, and you're getting people in. So different considerations. So there's lots of different things you need to take into account. So every pool is different. Obviously you've got standard tank pools, but you've also got large leisure pools as well with various different features. So look at your existing fixtures and fittings, your lane width and costs for new dividers. So you might find that, you know, splitting your pool up is going to cost you £300–400 to do a new setup. However, the income you're going to generate from that is going to far exceed those costs. So it's important that you cost everything up. See if you can use your existing fixtures and fittings to start with, but there are other options that you've got available as well. You also have to look at your movable floors, any filtration points and currents. So Alex had a really good example of one of the swim schools he was using, he set up, whereby he'd designated an area for swimming lessons and hadn't taken into account the currents in that particular area, and all the children started drifting off to one side. So you do need to look at your currents as well, especially in those leisure pools if you've got river rapids and things like that. You also need to consider your blind spots and your lifeguarding points, any anchor points, depths of the pool, if you've got wave pit bars which need to be kind of barriered off, beach areas. So I'm aware of a particular provider basing their maximum capacity on their pool area space, well, if you've got beach areas where you've only got sort of 2-3 inches of water, you can't really do swimming lessons in there. So you need to be aware of the depth of the water in those beach areas. Look at making the most of your features. So slide tanks and spas are particularly good for using for things like adult and child lessons. There's Discovery Ducklings and Duckling Awards. You might have a fewer number of children in that particular lesson, but it's great if it's warmer water. Just do make sure if you're using slide tanks that even when the slide's not on, it's got adequate filtration and you're in line with your chlorination and dosing and things. You could use splash areas. So I don't know if any of you have got those areas where it's kind of a padded area with squirty toys and whales' heads which fill with water and buckets and things. That is particularly good for water confidence. So potentially you could do water confidence lessons in there as well as shallow water. You do need to think outside the box as well. So changing room capacity. It's all very well having potentially the ability to have 100 children at a time swimming in your swimming lessons, but if you've got 100 children all trying to access the change rooms at the same time, how does that work? Is it something that is actually manageable? You might want to consider staggering your classes, so have some start on the hour and the half hour and some start on the 1/4 and the 1/4. Also consider your car parking capacity as well. So think about the overall picture of your centre. Every centre is different. You're all going to have your own challenges. So these are some examples of the equipment you might want to use. So you will all, I would assume, have seen the traditional lane ropes with the orange lane rope with the floats on. There are different options you can use, and there's lots of different kind of websites you can buy from. You might find that the hooks and the suction pads, they are quite expensive. However, once you've purchased them, you can obviously use them in loads of different areas. If you want some slightly cheaper options, you could potentially use the orange rope, the orange lane rope, or even the inside. So if you've got any old throw bags, which are split, you could use the throw bag rope, thread those through a hollow noodle or even pipe lagging to create a floating bar for small areas, especially for preschool and stages 1 and 2. So there's lots of different options. You just need to kind of think outside the box a little bit on that. So when you're teaching, there's lots of different things you need to take into account. So planning. Planning is really important when you're limited to the area of pool you have. Also, if you are going to be rotating between the teaching points. So, for example, if you were teaching stage 3 in a learner pool, you would want to try them in deeper water, say, even if it's sort of 5 minutes of every lesson, or do 1 session a month in the main pool to get them used to being in slightly deeper water. But that needs to be planned, and you need to talk to each other as a teaching team to make sure everybody's aware of who's going where and when, to give those children the best opportunity to swim in different depths of water. Group sizes. So sometimes by reducing the size of the group, you can add in another class, which is actually more profitable. But also by reducing the ratio, that makes it a much better teaching and learning experience. The number of teachers, assistants and helpers available. So sometimes you can run over fewer days and times but have more teaching points, but you need more teachers. Or you could run over more days and times but with less teaching stations and have more area open for the public, and then you don't need quite so many teachers. So potentially you could have your core teaching staff teaching all your main days, and then have cover staff come in. Whereas if you have lots of teaching stations all at the same time, finding cover can be more challenging. There is a iOS CPD Teaching in Deep Water, which is available on the iOS website. That is a fantastic CPD to give teachers an extra bit of information and knowledge and a bit more confidence teaching various different stages in deep water. For those of you who are interested, we do have a Not on the Road show where teaching in deep water is the key topic, and that's on the 3rd of June, 1 till 3 p.m. So you can find that on our website, and all it is a link. You don't actually have to book for that one. I will send out that link as part of the follow-up email after the webinar, so you've got that to look at, but definitely one that's recommended. Think about creating opportunities for teachers to do longer hours. So like I said before, you know, making sure you're giving your teachers an opportunity so they're not just coming in for an hour, hour and a half. You potentially will retain your teachers a lot better if they're getting a decent kind of day's work. Also, if they're multi-skilled, it means that you can change people around a bit as well for cover. Also consider your teaching aids. So have you got any pool platforms or flotation equipment, which is going to help you? So here's some examples. Obviously, there's lots available, whether it be kind of noodles, floats, the arm discs, aquaplanes, the swim fins, belts. You know, just think about what you might need. Obviously, risk assess it so that you've got you've got that equipment there and the sufficient quantity that you need for your groups. There's lots of different equipment which can help you teach in slightly deeper water, which enables you to plan your timetable a little bit better. So some other considerations: where is your demand? So traditionally demand will be stage 1, where you'll probably see your biggest waiting lists. So think about where you can put those stage 1 classes. Can you move some other sessions, other stages around a little bit to accommodate more stage 1, stage 2 classes? Your local demographics. So it's all very well maximising your pool timetable and your teaching space, but actually if your local demographic won't support the number of spaces that you've got available in your swim school, say for example, you were quite coastal and your demographic is more of a senior population, then you'll want to look at more sort of daytime stuff for seniors to get them moving, and potentially, you know, learn to swim for adults and seniors. So have a little think about that. Liaise with your club. So can you put your stages 7 to 10 at the same time as club? So do they need all their booked lanes? And club coaches can support the teachers and talent spot and feed into the club. You also need to consider your council contracts, so your public swimming, and potentially this is an opportunity for you to renegotiate these terms. Now, obviously, you know, we're in unprecedented times, so this is a brilliant opportunity to go back to your council and say, look, we need to reevaluate this contract. We need to make our business as profitable so we can sustain ourselves as much as possible. We'd like to make these changes. You also need to consider private hire bookings, and you might have historical bookings which can't be moved, or if you were to try and move them, potentially it could be problematic. So consider those as well, and consider your public sessions. If I could ask you, if you've got any other considerations that you can think of, please can you put them in the chat box? And Alex, can you feed them back, please?
Of course, no problem.
So any considerations that you think we haven't covered, which you would want to take into account when you're timetabling?
Yeah, so we've got first couple coming through, Ruth. We've got local schools events and involvement in Drown Prevention Week and galas. We've got recruitment attention for teachers. That's a really good one. Private member clubs. Changes to timetable can often be an issue. Members that don't like change. Yes, I've got to come across that one before. Privately run schools.
Yeah.
I'm going to want to, you can share space with the public, so you don't need to reduce public access time, but still increase lesson access time. Opening hours can be a restriction there. Thank you for that one.
Yeah.
Lifeguarding, staff training.
Yeah, trying to fit that in can be quite challenging.
We've just got a question here about some of the equipment, actually. Just a question saying, what were the tables shown on the equipment slides used for? I think that's referring to the pool platforms route.
Yeah, so there's various different pool platforms available. So there's the pool platform company, and there's another pool platform company as well. So when I send out the follow-up information, I'll send you the links to those websites as well, so you can see what's going to be more suitable for your pool. Because the ones which were shown actually on the presentation, they've got suckers on the bottom, so they don't move quite so much. So they're really good, and they're quite solid. They're not going to go anywhere. So I'll include that link.
We've also got we have adult only hours for lifeguarding, and we've got we now need to add cautions about the pool use per current COVID-19 situation.
Yeah.
Privately run sessions, that's coming up quite a lot. And public, not necessarily like being next to swimming lessons because of noise and maybe additional splashing and what that could have on the public session. Pool temperature.
Yeah.
That always comes up.
Yeah, I would say as well, I mean, having swim school at the same time as general public swim can be a benefit to the parents of the children in your swim school, simply for the fact that it means that they can go for a swim at the same time the lessons are on. If they've got more than one child, they can potentially swap those children around and still enjoy a fun swim as well. So there's lots of different opportunities there. Was there anything else, Alex?
We've got changing chlorine levels. Again, another question around social distancing against full capacity. Pool temperatures coming on again. Changes in chlorine levels as well.
Cool. Yeah. So regards to social distancing, obviously we don't necessarily know how things are going to pan out, what information is going to come out from PUTAG and government guidance. So this is mainly for, you know, when you're going back to operating as normal, and when those other guidances come out and we have more information, that will come out through our forums as well. So just bear that in mind, and obviously, you know, you need to consider your programs when we have that guidance. Lovely, thank you, Alex. Okay, so looking at lesson space then. So consider the space needed for each level. That's your first thing. So preschool and stages 1 and 2 should only be travelling or swimming up to 5 metres. Stages 3 to 5 should only be travelling or swimming up to 10 metres. Stage 6 should be concentrating on quality, so regularly swimming up to 10 metres with options to swim 25 metres to build stamina and to achieve that 25-metre distance and as part of the criteria. Stages 7 plus should be swimming 25 metres where the pool design allows. So if you only have a 15-metre pool, then obviously, you know, you're going to do your swims a little bit longer, potentially going to do 2 lengths as you build the stamina for your stage 7 pluses. So think about the learner's starting and end point. So you don't just run a marathon, you've got to go through different stages. So first, initially, you learn to roll over, then you learn to crawl, stand, walk. And then once you're walking, you might run some small distances as a child. And if you want to train for a marathon and actually run a marathon, you're going to start building up those distances to the point where you can then run a marathon. What we're saying is what we don't want is for children who have entered swim schools, or entered a Learn to Swim program, to be expected to run the marathon right at the start. You need to put those building blocks in process so that they build up those skills before they hit that end point. Okay, and by restricting their space, this is going to help.
Ruth, I just thought I'd add there, we've had someone in the comment box, just a bit of feedback saying the slides in reference to distances for 6s and 7s is really useful to know for clubs as well, and how to make sure clubs understand and how that might link together, which I thought was a really good comment just to raise as you're going through it.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, that's a really good comment. So this is an example. So this is our recommendation. Obviously, you know, your numbers might well be outside of this. Your teaching space is going to depend on your group size, your pool design and water depth. and should be adapted to suit your swim school, okay, or your Learn to Swim program. You do also need to take into account teacher and pupil ratio as well. So for example, with preschool and stages 1 and 2, we've got a maximum number of 10 in a 5 by 5 metre block. Well, for preschool, you're probably going to have potentially 6 children in that 5 by 5, but potentially you could increase that to say 9 if you had a level 2 teacher with a level 1 assistant teacher. So these are quite flexible, but they just give you an idea about where you should be pitching your sizes. Okay. So for parent and child, really you want sort of the 8 by 10 for 12 people. Obviously, if you have smaller space than that, you can reduce those numbers. Preschool stages 1 and 2 is 5 by 5 meters. Stages 3 to 4, you want 5 by 10 meters, so doing a 10 meter swim or travel. And then stages 5 to 6, about 8 by 10 meters, with an option for stage 6s to do lengths. And then 7 to 10, you're looking at kind of 12 children over 2 lanes really. Again, you could increase that number, so you had 8 per lane if you had, say, a level 2 teacher with an assistant teacher. You could increase from 12 to your 16 swimmers. So have a little think about your layouts. Obviously as well, it depends on the width of the lane. So it's worthwhile noting that standard width lane is about 2.5 meters, and that's what the next slides are based on. However, your lane width might be quite narrow. There's a pool just down the road from me. It's a 4-lane pool. It's quite an old school pool where they've just recently put a roof on it, and those lanes are quite narrow. So you will need to think about the actual lane space rather than the lanes.
Ruth, we just had a question just before we go on to the next section around on that slide how it mentions teacher and pupil ratios and things, and we just want to we had a question about the safe supervision document and where that's at currently. I wondered if you could give an update. I know it's something we've been working on.
Yeah, certainly. So at the moment it's in its final redraft stage. That has gone out to all of the partners we work with for final checking. So once that process has been followed and it's been put into its final kind of layout, we will then get it back out to our members. The aim is, however, it's not going to be put directly onto the website. The general feedback we've had from our customers, anybody who's running a Learn to Swim program, is that customers, parents will go on, look at that document and ignore the risk assessment element of it and assume people aren't teaching within ratio. So the idea is that document will be available to operators and swim schools on request rather than being out in a public forum, but more information will come out on that. It's likely that if you're signed up for pooling resources or you're a swim school member, you will get an email once it's finalised with that information on it. Is that okay?
Thanks, Ruth.
Cool, lovely. So work in progress at the moment, but we're nearly there. Okay, one of the other considerations you have to think of is your stages and your capacity. So I don't know, many of you will most likely run a Discovery Ducklings and Ducklings program. Some of those will be more successful than others. At the moment, there has been a bit of an impact on these lower end stages, the preschool stages, because of the additional funding and childcare from the government. So that, I know, has had a bit of an impact on how many you have on those preschool stages. Also, it will depend on your teacher delivering those stages. Some will be more popular than others. If you need any support with that, please do get in touch and we can offer that support to you. But generally speaking, the stages 1 to 7, 8, 9, 10, you tend to get more children in the stage 1, and then as you progress up through the program, you get drop-offs, usually drop-offs around stage 4 or 5, where they go, oh, my child can swim 25 meters, they're fine, we're going to pull them out of swim school. But then you do get, you know, a few retaining up through. Obviously, we want to try and increase that retention as much as we possibly can. But you do need to take this into consideration when you're doing your pool timetabling and your lesson tabling as well. What I would do, if you do have the ability to run reports off the system, see how your triangle looks regarding numbers, and that will give you a good idea about where you need to develop and increase your lessons. Also look at your waiting lists and things as well. So I'm just going to talk through some examples of pool layouts. Now, everybody's pools will be different. This is just to give you some ideas. What I would recommend when you're looking at your pool layouts is basically get an Excel spreadsheet and adjust the cell size so that they are in square blocks, and set out your kind of outlay of your swimming pool in, say, 5 or 1 meter sections per cell, so you can then look and move around your stations so you can see what fits best. So this is an example for a learner pool, a 10 by 10 meter pool. So layout 1, we've got 2 stations and they're 5 by 10 meter stations. So you can have those as kind of stage 3s in there, stage 4s in there. If you look at layout 3, this is probably the best of the 4 layouts, because in station 1s and 2s you can mix between having your preschools, your stage 1s and your stage 2s, and then station 3 could be your stage 3s. Obviously it depends on your depths, and then stage 3s could go into your main pool, stage 4s could go into your main pool, sorry. So there's lots of different examples. Just have a look at your size and shapes. If you're in a situation where you haven't got a 10 by 10 meter learner pool, say it's 8 by 10, potentially what you could do is reduce the sizes down, reduce the class sizes, and run two stations, but with a smaller teacher to pupil ratio, and then you'll still have an increase in revenue for that. This slide's a bit more complicated. So this is basically a 15 by 25 meter 6-lane pool. So the lane width is standard 2.5 meters. Again, I said check your lane widths because you might need to make some adjustments to this. So these are just some suggestions of how you could potentially run your program. Okay. So if we look at layout 1, so if you only had a main pool and you don't have a learner pool, not everybody's got that luxury. Station 1 and 2 could be a mixture between preschool stages 1s and 2s. Station 3 could be stage 3, and then station 4, stage 4. Potentially, depending on your depth, you could get some pool platforms in. Station 4 could be 5s, 6s, or even rookie lifeguard. Station 6 could be that stage 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's lots of different opportunities for you to lay out your pool. What I would also make sure you do is try and come up with a layout which you can almost stick to for the majority of your session. So the last thing you want to be doing is changing your pool layouts every half an hour. So come up with a pool layout where you can maybe stick with it for the first 2 hours, and then say, for example, 4 till 6 you run with layout 5, and then you can change to layout 9 for your lane swimming sessions for those higher end stages later on in the evening. So there's lots of different opportunity there for you to be flexible with your lanes, and this is where those suction cups and the lane grips really come into their own, because it means you can adjust your layouts. But the best bet is to get an Excel document up and simply have a play with it and see what's going to work and think about your capacities. So we do have some stations, say for example station 7 and 8 on layout 4, where it's 7.5 by 10 meters. So it's not quite the 8 meter section. So maybe just look at reducing your ratio by 1, and then you've still got plenty of space. And also you're increasing your number of classes. So there's lots of opportunity there for you to have a look. Okay, going on to pool timetabling. So pool timetabling considerations. So we've already mentioned about client restraints in your local council. Availability of staff, so try to have longer lesson blocks or teaching hours with maybe half-hour or 1 hour gaps, and the number of teachers you have available. Your rota costings, so I know a lot of operators will go to one lifeguard and make it lane swimming because that means they can reduce their overall operating costs. Any historical hires, school bookings, galas and competitions you've got, your customer demand, and any initiatives you've got like public health and good boost, and your population demographics. So we've got some example pool timetables. Apologies for the garish nature, they are quite bright, but they just give you a bit of an idea about how you can timetable your lessons. So this is an example of a 6-lane 25-metre pool. So we've got schools running between 9 and 12, Monday, Wednesday and Friday. We then use a third of the shallow end from 1 till 4 for preschool parent and child lessons. And then we have half the pool for swim school between 4 and 6. And then we've got swim school at the same time as swimming club as well. Now, the beauty of this, it means that you've got general public swim all the way through your timetable. And also you're giving your teachers an opportunity to work full days. You could potentially have a teacher who starts at 9, finishes at 4, or starts at 9, finishes at 6, or you could have teachers who maybe actually start at 4 and finish at 8, so and maybe timetable a break in between. So just be aware, breaks away from poolside, give them opportunity to come away from poolside and have a drink and have some food if they need it. Maybe warm up, get changed if they're teaching in the water, that sort of thing. So that's one example whereby we've got general public swim available all the time because the client restriction is that they have to have general swim available. The second one, so they actually use their whole pool for swim school, so delivering same kind of number of lessons, but actually the pool is closed for public swim between 4 and 6 on a Monday, Wednesday and Saturday morning, and also Sunday night. For those of you who usually operate lessons, the majority of your lessons are probably going to be between 4 and 6 on a Saturday morning. Swim school on a Sunday, from my experience, does work quite well as well, especially a Sunday night, because children will generally go in for their swimming lessons. Parents will then get them out, get them showered, into their pyjamas, ready to go home, have a bit of tea before going to bed and ready for school. Works quite well for children as well, because it means that they've actually had a bit of a rest time between, you know, school all day and all week. They've had Saturday and all of Sunday to rest, and then they come in nice and fresh on the Sunday night. Also, as a parent, it would mean that potentially you've got the majority of the weekend to get on and get out and do things, especially if the weather's nice, and you're not quite so restricted. You could potentially go away for the weekend and come back Sunday for 4 o'clock to go into swim school. Also, that feeds quite nice into any swimming club sessions on a Sunday night as well, so that you know, they can progress through. So there's various different options you can go for. This is an example of a 8-lane pool. So they have got pretty much the same amount of lessons in this 8-lane pool. However, they've also got some general swim time at the same time as swim school. Having 8 lanes gives you an awful lot more flexibility. Also, you'll notice the schools as well. So because they've got 8 lanes, they're able to have schools in at the same time as public swim, and potentially more than one school in at a time. So they've really maximised the amount of space available for schools, which is brilliant, because it actually doesn't impact on their general swim that much. So that might be a good opportunity. Potentially you're going to get schools wanting to rearrange their bookings and make some adjustments, looking at the school swimming charter over this period. So have a look and see how flexible you can be for those schools. What I would try and make sure you don't do, however, is offer separate individual half-hour slots if you've got a situation where you have to close your only changing facility for that school, because you will be wasting a lot of your timetable to closures just simply for schools changing. So consider bunching those schools together and making sure you're making the most out of your pool time. Right, apologies, I've done an awful lot of talking. Alex, are there any questions? If you've got any questions, please write them in the chat box or raise your hand as well. So you can raise your hand and we'll see that in the participants.
Yeah, not questions as such, yeah. If there's any comes through, I'll make sure I share them. But we have had quite a few around. Sorry, I was muted then. We had quite a few about comments around Sundays in general, whether some people saying actually they've been really popular for them in terms of it reduces, parking and some of those issues they have on other days, and other people saying actually for staffing it can be quite challenging. And for some organisations that have like big galas, big events that run out of their facilities, Sundays can often be when they fall as well. So yeah, just some conversations around that, rather than questions as such, but some really good conversations between partners on the chat box there.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's got to work for you and your venue. And the beauty is as well, if you're working quite well with your swimming club and you're actually employing their teachers as well, potentially you might get teachers who teach for your swim school and then go into teaching for club afterwards. So actually for them, it's easier to manage teachers. So it all depends on your setup and how you're going to operate, and you've got to do ultimately what's right for you and your pool, your demographics, and what's going to work well for you.
So we've got a few questions come through. So if I read two out and then we can go through those first. So first one is, have you got any ideas around dividing the width of the pool to make more use of the pool? Any ideas would be great, please. And then another question, do you have any suggestions for getting more schools involved in the Learn Swim programme during weekdays?
Right, okay, so first of all, let's tackle the width one. So you can get, I don't know if you've seen they're basically kind of cleaning sign holders, or they're basically pillars with a block in, which you could potentially put into the pool. Normally you'd see them with a chain across, like a plastic chain. So you can get those and you could put those in to mark a corner point and then have lane ropes going between them. So then you don't have to have the length section of the lane rope in to block off that corner. So that works quite well. Sorry, what was the other question, Alex?
So do you have any suggestions for getting more schools involved in Learn to Swim in the weekdays?
Right, okay. So most of you will likely be aware we've got the school swimming charter. So the school swimming charter, for those of you who haven't seen it, is for the schools to deliver in conjunction with the pool that they hire. The idea being that it gives the schools their own award pathway, which is mainly going towards water safety skills and achieving national curriculum requirements. So working with the schools, certainly to make sure they're delivering the school swimming charter, upskilling their teachers, is a really good way into those schools. And we've got lots of different opportunities for that. On the iOS website, there is also free training to upskill your teachers to the National Curriculum Training Programme as well. So I would take a look at that. Regarding getting schools to kind of market your swimming lesson programme and getting those children into your swimming lessons, there's lots of different things you can do. So schools, they used to do an awful lot of, you give them leaflets and it goes into book bags. They don't want to do that anymore. It's a waste of paper. They tend to get soggy in book bags. They don't go to the parent anyway. But they do have a lot of their own newsletters and social media channels. So I would focus on digital resources for schools to push your programs. And I would also talk to your schools about use of their pupil premium funding as well. So for those of you who aren't aware of pupil premium funding, basically every school has to deliver school swimming as part of their national curriculum. They can access additional funding for anybody who needs it, who aren't going to hit those national curriculum requirements. So also it covers things like training and things for teachers as well. So potentially they could have a list of, say, 10 students who they know are not going to hit their national curriculum requirement for swimming. So they could use that pupil premium fund to put those children onto your lessons, whether that be crash courses or paying for a block of lessons. So that's a brilliant opportunity to get those students onto your swim school, and that's paid for by the pupil premium fund. So I would open up that dialogue with your school. Again, that pupil premium fund, if they had children who needed private lessons for any reason, they could potentially come into your program on private lessons as well. Alex, have you got any other ideas?
Yeah, I think, Ruth, I think you've covered the majority of them. The only thing I would add there is I've seen a few partners that have used it for exactly what you were kind of alluding to at the end there, where they've used it to part fund or fund some lessons privately. So maybe those children that haven't yet achieved their national curriculum outcome can come for private lessons in a Learn Swim program at a discounted or reduced rate to supplement the school swimming. And that means there can be more time spent in lessons for some of the children that may be a little more advanced as well. So that's some good practice we've seen there. So we've got some more questions. So we've got, what would you recommend for health clubs? We've got some questions around upskilling teachers for the school swimming.
Okay, let's tackle the health clubs one first.
Okay, let's start there.
We'll go one at a time. So health clubs, obviously, slightly different because of your clientele, and also the fact that you're effectively delivering a premium product. You'll want more accessible space for your customers, because obviously they're paying premium rate for their memberships. So I would look at how you could split your pool. So if you've got a 4-lane 20-meter pool, potentially you could split it so you've got half the pool for public, half the pool for your swimming lessons. Most pools like that will be kind of 1.2 meters all the way across as well. You'll find that a lot. So I would split that probably into 4 teaching stations depending on your size of pool, and have lower numbers in the class. Or you could potentially have 2 smaller areas and 1 larger area and put pool platforms in. So there's lots of different things you can do. Also, health club pools, you might well have large spa areas, which would be brilliant for parent and baby. Okay, next one, Alex.
Okay, so there's quite a few come through now. So let me just try and make sure we've not missed any. So we've got any ideas of running a pool of Learn to Swim in an endless pool?
Oh, okay.
Interesting one.
Interesting one. I guess it depends on the size of your endless pool, because you could get anything from, you know, individual. So you're more looking at targeting, there's higher end swimmers potentially, and doing more kind of stroke analysis type sessions. It all depends on the size of the endless pool, whether you have the endless pool function turned on. I know some endless pools have also got kind of jacuzzi type functions as well. So that's quite a difficult one to answer. But it does mean that you can adjust the pool temperature depending on what market you're targeting. So if you're targeting the parent and child market, have it warmer. If you're targeting the triathlete, competitive swim, higher end market, you can have it cooler, and potentially that temp change can happen overnight. So you could have Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays is parent and child, or kind of low end Learn to Swim, and then later on in the week, give it a day to cool down, and have it as the higher end swimmers, where you can have it as a lower temperature. Might give you a bit more variety in who you're targeting.
Okay, so another question, Ruth, we've got, are there a maximum recommended pool depth for learn to swim stages? For example, we have a pool which is quite deep, and I struggle to get in the number of lower stages lessons that we require.
No, there isn't any guidance on it, but what I would say is look at what you can put in place. So definitely attend that teaching in deep water seminar, because that will definitely give you some help and advice, especially when it comes to things like teaching aids, and also things like the pool platforms as well. I mean, to be fair, with preschoolers, if you're teaching in the shallow end of a main pool at 1.2 meters, they're not going to be able to touch the bottom anyway. Just means that you have to adapt the way that you teach slightly, and you know, their travel is always going to be wearing an aid for that extra support. So definitely go on to that, not on the road show for teaching in deep water.
Also, not necessarily a question, but a few people saying around, you know, maximizing pool space, and some of the layouts that we saw obviously increases numbers, which has some really positive effects in terms of income and growth. But maybe some concerns around it looking squished and parent perception. Sorry. But Jeff from Gateshead has put a bit of a reply in the comment box. I thought it was quite good, so I'm just going to read that one out if anyone's not seen that. But it says there is a training requirement with teachers if you change over to a maximised pool space, so that they know how to deliver differently to minimise it looking squished or squashed. Also, a communication requirement with parents so they understand the benefits will bring, rather than just thinking this as trying to make more money. And which I think re-emphasises what you were saying, Ruth, about it's got to work for you as an operator, and actually what comes with that is that teacher support and that parent communications, which is definitely not always easy. But I think if they come together, that's how you can really maximise that pool space, if that's the route you go down.
Yeah, certainly. And it tends to be a slow change as you start to build as well. Like, you don't tend to do it. You're not going to have 800 spare kids to put into your swim school overnight. So it's going to be a slow progression. I mean, maximising his pool space. Yes, if you're going from a 10 by 10 metre learner pool and you're then putting an additional lesson in, you do have to have that communication with your customers and explain why. And actually, you can say, we're following information from Swim England. These are the benefits, and using all the benefits that we've talked through for the customer and sending that out to them so that they're fully aware of how it works. And also, their children might well be benefiting from a reduced ratio. Where they might be doing 1 to 12 at the moment, they could be going down to 1 to 8, which is obviously going to give them a far better teaching experience. Cool. Anything else?
So you said you can use premium money for SEND children. Does this matter what standard they are, please?
I believe it's obviously about hitting national curriculum targets. So the school needs to apply for that national curriculum funding, the pupil premium fund. But if that child isn't reaching the national curriculum targets, then that's when that funding is available. But also potentially schools can use it for things like upskilling their teachers. So their own school teachers could potentially attend the national curriculum training programme to upskill them to deliver school swimming. If they're working in conjunction with your level 2 teachers, then this is going to make the school swimming much more effective and progressive, and it's going to benefit the children.
I've had a few questions about the actual webinar itself, and some of the links that we've talked about. I've just put in the comment box that you will be able to get those through the email that we send post-webinar, so all the links will be in there for things like the training through school swimming and various things we've discussed. But someone asked Ruth if they could have a copy of the slides post-webinar.
Yep, so there will be a link to the PDF of the slides, yeah.
Quite a few questions and conversations going around safeguarding in the chat box around public and learn to swim happen at the same time. But I actually think within the chat box and various operators talking to each other, we've actually probably got to the answer that people are looking for. But just to reiterate, yes, I think there was lots of great examples of learn to swim, school swimming, and public swimming in the same pool space at the same time. But certainly a risk assessment to support that is needed, whether that considers things like entry and exit, changing rooms, delivery on poolside. But there's absolutely some great examples out there of that running at the same time. It just needs to have that risk assessment to support it.
Yeah, certainly. And I would say as well, you mean there should also already be procedures in place to stop random people from picking up children from swimming lessons. So a handover from the teacher to the parent. You should already have those kind of systems in place for us from a swim school perspective. So have a look at that and just make sure it's nice and robust. Okay, any other questions?
There's no more questions currently. We're getting quite a few people saying they're signing off now and that they've enjoyed the webinar so far. So some good feedback there. Thank you everyone who's taken the time just to add something in the comment box. We do appreciate that. But there's no more questions at the minute. If I've missed any, because I did get a few at once, if you're happy to put them back in the box, that'd be great. But at the minute, there's no more coming through, Ruth.
Lovely, that's brilliant. So what I would say as well, if you need any support with your pool programming and you're a Swim England member, then please just email us at the Learn to Swim inbox, and we potentially, once we come back from after the current situation, we can give you support with your pool planning. So if you do need any help, please do shout, and we'll come back to you in due course. I'll put that in the post email as well. So thank you very much for all attending. Sorry it was a lot of me talking, but hopefully you managed to gain something from it. Thank you very much.